This series considers a number of important issues in bridge resource management. Parts of the Bridge Procedures series discuss bridge watchkeeping and the master-pilot relationship. As an extension to these topics, this video examines the importance of the human factor in accident prevention. Accidents will happen. At sea, on land, and in the air. When they do, the usual response is to find someone to blame. Often, the candidate chosen is the hapless individual in charge. But this approach misses the point. To improve safety, we need to look beyond finding a scapegoat. It means taking into account the human factor. As far as the shipping industry is concerned, this means turning away from the old-fashioned autocratic leadership style that was widespread in the past. Perhaps this was once an effective management style, but on high-technology ships sailing in today's busy sea lanes, it is no longer appropriate. The airline industry has been aware of this for some time. But it took a terrible accident to change the perception of effective management on the flight deck. The accident happened in Tenerife in March 1977. Although there were a host of contributory factors, delays, poor visibility, difficult communications, perhaps fatigue, the disaster occurred principally because the captain of a KLM 747 started his takeoff run without proper clearance from the tower. At that point, low clouds rolled in just as another 747 was taxiing in the opposite direction on the same runway. The planes collided before the takeoff was completed. Tenerife remains the world's worst air disaster. 586 people died. From the cockpit flight recorder, it is apparent that both the first officer, sitting next to the captain, and the flight engineer behind him were aware of the situation. But their interventions were half-hearted. They were not assertive and failed to stop the captain because he was the senior pilot in the company, in charge of all 747 training, and a man of enormous prestige. His autocratic style was seen to prevent them from stopping the accident. This incident led the airline industry to realize that however committed to safety you were, whatever you spent on training, however experienced the crew, it was not enough. You also needed a management style appropriate to today's technology. In aviation, the days of autocratic captains are long gone. There's a teamwork approach where everyone is aware of what's going on. Everyone contributes and feels free to speak up if they feel something isn't right.
Not stabilized, go around. My controls going round, full power, flaps 22.
With this approach, mistakes can normally be corrected before they become disasters.
162.
As both ship sizes and speeds increase, and as traffic grows, the lessons of that terrible day in Tenerife and the human factor studies it initiated become more and more relevant to what goes on in the wheelhouse.
That was close, wasn't it?
Very close.
Human beings make mistakes. That's inevitable. The objective is to minimize the consequences of these mistakes, and that requires good training. It also needs an organization with sound operating principles, a teamwork approach where those on shore and those at sea work together in synergy to achieve their objectives. Synergy means working in a way which ensures that the whole result is better than simply adding together the results of the two teams. The overall result is greater than the sum of its parts. There is a high degree of situational awareness at sea and ashore. Everyone helps to enhance the performance of both sides. Everyone keeps an eye open for any error or mistakes that have crept in. To understand why we all make mistakes, we need to look at the study of human behavior, psychology. 3 types of behavior have been identified in everyday life. These are knowledge-based, rule-based, and skill-based behavior. Let's take learning to drive. When you start, it's a new situation. You apply the knowledge that you have learned elsewhere. This knowledge-based behavior uses a lot of mental resources and produces a lot of errors. The next stage is rule-based behavior. A fairly high level of conscious action is required as the individual learns the task. Training helps to point out the rules. There are fewer errors than in knowledge-based behavior. They result from either the application of the wrong rule or the wrong application of a good rule. The final stage is skill-based behavior. The individual is familiar with the situation. The task has become routine. The conscious brain is not involved much of the time. The person is on autopilot. Errors are infrequent, but are due to occasional slips and lapses. These will occur however good your training. Skill-based behavior is the most common on the bridge. It's worth noting that no type of behavior is error-free, and indeed, errors are essential to the learning process.
5 degrees.
We have an amazing ability to perceive, remember, and make decisions. But these processes are all subject to various types of error. The topics of perception, brain function, and decision-making all represent a lifetime study. But let's look at a few problems of particular interest to mariners. Short-term memory, for example. This is an amazing facility, but we can only deal with a maximum of 7 or so items. So a briefing should only include 7 or fewer items. If there are more, a checklist will help to overcome this. This short-term memory is also very fragile. Interruptions are liable to wipe out the items retained there. No one can escape this.
Give them a ship's badge, something like this.
You could try a little test.
To our high water to see how long time we can be stopped and still reach the high water.
Okay, sir.
First, set a complex task for a colleague.
But let's give them what we can. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Once he's started, arrange for him to be interrupted.
Coffee, sir.
What?
Would you like any coffee?
Yes, please.
How do you take it?
If he returns successfully to the task, it will only be with difficulty. This is why it is so important to avoid distractions on the bridge at times of critical maneuvering. It's just not possible to remember what you were doing while being interrupted by mobile phone calls and inappropriate requests. These distractions need to be kept out of the wheelhouse at critical times. We receive an enormous amount of information from our senses. About 70% of this comes from the eyes. There are many sources of error in perception due to optical illusions, false perspective, and how the eye sees color and movement, especially in low-level light conditions. These can all give us a false picture, as anyone who's navigated a ship through dense traffic at night can tell you. But errors can also creep into even the things that we can see accurately. In order to cope with the enormous amount of sensory data, a lot of unconscious filtering and processing occurs. This can lead to several types of misconceptions and error. For one, perceptual set or context. Put simply, we see and hear what we expect to see and hear. For example, a change of helm to starboard is given.
Hard to port, sir.
In error, the helmsman steers to
Yes,
port.
okay, we'll just...
The officer interprets the first part of the move as the expected turn to starboard. It's only when the turn is well underway and the helmsman confirms the helm position that he realizes that the ship is turning in the wrong direction.
Hard to starboard, sir.
Thank you.
Another is called representation error. Once you identify something, your memory retains that identification, even if it's wrong. At night, a faint green light is seen to port. The brain may represent this as the light of a distant ship. Suddenly, it is seen as the light on a very near yacht. A rapid but late change in our representation is needed. Whatever type of behavior you are operating under, you will be prone to error. In addition, your memory, eyes, and ears are all fallible. And your brain can misinterpret things perceived correctly. Yet it's even worse than that. For your state of health, fatigue, and stress level can drain mental resources and increase the likelihood of error. Although prolonged high levels of stress are bad for health, human beings require a certain level of stress to work effectively. At constant low levels of stress, such as being half asleep, performance is poor. It improves with increased stress up to an optimum point, after which increased stress lowers performance. This continues until the state where stress is very high, but performance is very low. This is the state of panic. We are familiar with stress caused by difficult work situations. For instance, incompatible goals. You have to finish loading and sail on the next tide, but you can't do both. Or can you? But stress can also be caused by physical stimuli, such as noise and heat, as well as mental triggers, such as fear and insecurity. The body responds with the fight or flight reaction, preparing us for a physical response. The blood supply to the muscles increases. The air tubes in the lungs widen. The heart rate increases, and the digestive system slows down. The body is prepared for physical exertion to the detriment of mental activity. Under stress, perception deteriorates. Aggression increases. There tends to be excessive concentration on a single aspect of the situation. Communication becomes impaired. There is a tendency to regress to earlier behavior types, including the increased use of your mother tongue. New skills are lost. So, high levels of stress are bad for decision-making and are inappropriate on the bridge of a ship.
Anyway, we'll see when you see him. pilot launch. He's only just behind us.
Oh.
He's 10 minutes behind us.
Oh.
Sorry, Captain, 15 minutes.
Humour and conviviality are good antidotes to prevent stress building up, even in times of intense activity.
I swim, sir. My favourite captain has suggested perhaps I would like a swimming lesson.
But too little stress is not good either. This is the state of hypovigilance, sometimes described as the lights are on, but no one's home. In this relaxed state, overall perception is greatly reduced, and errors become more frequent. Lack of sleep can lead to hypovigilance, and seafarers need to ensure that they do get enough sleep, sometimes difficult in today's trading practices and patterns. Maximum permissible working times are defined under the STCW Convention. A further difficulty is that not all modern bridge equipment is well designed for human operation. Each ship varies, and each has its own problems. Sometimes there is a vast amount of information available. Sometimes the controls are set up in awkward ways. So, how should we deal with all these issues? First, good training. Secondly, good management from the shore office, ensuring that there are sufficient competent people on board to do the work. Third, good personal time management. Fourth, keeping in good health and getting enough sleep. Next, working each task to a standard operating procedure drawn up in advance. Finally, working with a teamwork management style where any errors made can be picked up by other team members.
Yes, good morning. For your information, we are coming up in the traffic separation and is about to turn to port, entering Young Fairway.
1.5 miles? Yes, you're in the traffic separation scheme and about to turn to port. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please
The idea of a team is to produce better results than the most gifted and well-trained member of that team. To work in this way, the team needs to act together, to be synergistic. Each member needs to use the capabilities and skills of the others to achieve the common objective defined by the master. Leadership needs to be firm, but flexible and friendly, in contrast to the autocratic or the hands-off approach.
We are approaching the crossover point. We are about 0.4 miles from the wheel-over point.
The master decides the objectives, then evolves a plan in discussion with his team. Their opinions are sought. Everyone feels able to make comments. The plan bubbles up rather than being imposed on the team. All the team members feel some ownership of the plan.
Yes, but the captain is busy now, navigating. You have to call him later.
The second officer deals with all the calls to the bridge, informing whoever asks for the master that the captain is busy with navigation, even though the master might be nearby and hear what's being said.
Call you when he have the time for that.
Okay,
The master is kept free to supervise the navigation and deal with collision avoidance. He is always in charge, but he is not autocratic. His enthusiasm, friendly comments, and occasional jokes help to motivate the group. Decisions are based on facts and not on personal prejudice. Each team member's contribution is valued. This has a strong motivating effect, as all actions become the property of the group and not just of the senior individual. This type of team would respond well to emergencies or sudden changes in circumstances. It would also be able to include new members comfortably, a pilot, for instance. The team is working to a standard operating procedure, the passage plan, that is written down and referred to. The team achieves its objectives in a very efficient way. Everyone supports everyone else.
And the next course is going to be...
Actions and decisions are shared under the authority of the master, who never loses control or awareness of what is going on. It takes effort to establish this sort of teamwork. It does not occur spontaneously. Ask yourself about your own management style and those of the officers who work with you. Is your approach conducive to bridge teamwork and synergy? Do you think that your management style will allow others to pick up your errors and participate fully? You could record yourself in action to check your management style.
Starboard 10.
You might be surprised at what you find.
But it's only for ships.
The days of autocracy on the bridge are numbered.
Restricted.
In the busy, highly regulated and cost-conscious world of shipping today, synergistic management is the only effective management.
Because this could be mistaken for...
On board your own ship, understanding of this principle should be followed by discussion and exercises, preferably with the assistance of a PC-based simulator. In addition, there are several shore-based courses available,
Good morning. For your information,
such as the one devised by the Danish Maritime Institute, with the offer of certification. Like the airline industry, the shipping industry has come to realize that to prevent accidents, management style and the human factor need to be taken into account.